Hello, today what we're looking at is collecting data. So the data that we can collect can either come from a primary source. This is where data is collected firsthand by observation or survey. And a secondary source is where data is obtained from an external source such as a newspaper, website or another person's research. Secondary and primary sources have been looked at already in history for you. Examples. Let's state whether each set of data has come from a primary or secondary source, the average of income of someone in Australia, and the most popular type of pizza topping in Year 9. Please pause the video and have a quick discussion about what you think the answer will be. So for the average income of somebody in Australia, you would get this from a secondary source. That means that you will look it up on a website, you might look it up in the newspaper, or you might have somebody else do the research. For the most popular type of pizza topping in Year 9, that would be a primary source. So you would go around firsthand and observe or do a survey of everyone in Year 9 to ask them their favourite type of pizza topping. Now, there are three main types of ways that we can then collect the data. We have a census, where a whole population is surveyed. That means every student in the school would be surveyed. We have a sample, where a selected group of population is surveyed, such a small number in each class is questioned, or observation. So numerical facts are collected and tabulated, such as sports data, weather, and sales figures. So let's have a look at and state whether a census or sample should be used for each of the following: the number of children in an Australian family and the most popular TV show in Australia. Pause this video and have a quick discussion. Okay, so you should have discussed that the number of children in an Australian family would be done by a census. You probably have heard of a census before. There is the Australian census that happens every few years, where everyone in your household has to complete a form about who's living in your household. Now, for the most popular TV shows in Australia, you wouldn't ask the whole population. You just take a sample of the population of people in Australia and ask them what their favourite TV show is. When we collect a sample of data, we can collect it using three different methods. So these methods are random sampling, which means we limit the amount of bias that occurs. An example of random sampling is pulling a name out of a hat. Systematic sampling. Members of the sample are chosen according to a rule, so such as every 10th member of a population. So if I looked at the roll, I could pick every second person in the class, every third person in the class, and that is a systematic way of sampling and asking questions of a sample. We then have stratified sampling. So that's if the population is composed of various subgroups, then a proportion of each group in the sample is chosen. So for example, if there are 20 Year 7s, 30 Year 8s and 50 Year 9s and you only wanted a sample of 20 people, you would do the following calculations. You would do the number in the group divided by the total population times the number in the sample. So for Year 7, we have that there were 20 Year 7s. So we have 20 as our numerator. We then have that there is a total population. How we calculate our total population is we add everyone together. So we'd go 20 plus 30 plus 50 to get that our total population is equal to 100. And then we multiply by the number of people we want in the sample. So we want 20 people in the sample. So if we go 20 over 100 times by 20, we get that it equals to 4. For Year 8, there are 30 Year 8s. So we do 30 over our 100 times by the number of people we wanted in the sample, which is 20. So there's 6 Year 8s. And then with Year 9, we have that there are 50 Year 9s out of our total population of 100, and then we want 20 in the sample, so we get our answer as 10 Year 9s. What we're going to do now is we're going to state whether each of the following is an example of a random, systematic, or stratified sampling. So to complete a survey about how many people lived in each house in the area. So Josh visited every fourth house in his street. Is this an example of random, systematic, or stratified sampling? Jo selected one house from each street in her neighbourhood. Is this an example of random, systematic, or stratified sampling? And then Jack put the street names and numbers in a hat and drew out 10 to visit. Is this an example of random, systematic, or stratified sampling? Pause this video and have a quick class discussion. Okay, I'm hoping that when you discussed this, you decided that when Josh visited every fourth house in his street, that this was an example of systematic sampling. When Jo selected one house from each street in her neighbourhood, this is an example of stratified sampling. And when Jack put the street names and numbers in a hat and drew out 10 to visit, this is an example of random sampling.